Accountability is owning your outcomes, good or bad. It's easy to blame others, right? Market conditions or product limitations or some internal process when a deal falls through or something doesn't go well. But at the end of the day, the best sales reps are gonna look inward first.
Welcome back to another episode of the Elite Selling Podcast. We're your hosts, Frankie and Griffin. Today, we've got an awesome guest for you. We've got Adam Block, who is the CRO over at Mortive. Before that, he spent 8 years at Medallia.
Yeah, it's an awesome conversation with Adam where we break down not only his definition of an elite seller, but what it takes to build and scale world-class enterprise sales teams. The skills you need if you're going to make it into enterprise, the characteristics that Adam looks for before he hires anybody to be a seller on his team. And so listen up if you're a seller, if you're a sales leader that's building a team out, this is going to be a great episode. Again, before we jump in, if you are liking the podcast, if you're listening, give us a like, give us a subscribe, share it with a friend. Let's get the word out. Adam, it's a great episode and we just want to bring more great sellers on. Without further ado, here is Adam. Welcome to the Elite Selling Podcast, Adam. We are happy to have you as our guest. We'd all love to start with your take on why scaling teams 2025, a lot of us are heading into Q3. Would love your take on why this is so important to you and why you wanted to focus on this topic today.
If you're going to grow the enterprise value of an organization, inevitably you're going to need more people and more great people to do that. So having the right systems in place, having the right processes, having the right lens so that we can bring the people on into roles where they are going to help our customers and help ultimately grow the enterprise value of our organization is critical. And not every company is in that position. And so when you have that opportunity, especially when things are going well, your product is working well and the market is active, you've got to be in the right mindset and have the right controls and checks and balances and resourcing, frankly, to be able to go and scale the organization. And we've done that pretty tremendously here at Mortive. We continue to do it. So it's a topic that's certainly top of mind for us.
I think when you joined as an enterprise leader, wasn't it something like 4 AEs or a really small number managing hundreds of accounts, 500 accounts? And now what does that world look like today?
When I came on, to your point, we were predominantly a down market business. So the majority of our focus and sort of the old days was mid-market, commercial, and SMB. The enterprise portion was not a big piece of what we did. Now, luckily, we were sort of drug into the enterprise business by our customers, but our go-to-market organization had not yet been scaled to take advantage of the opportunity. So that was kind of the backdrop. And so when I joined, there were 9 AEs. It ended up going down to 4. And here you've got this 3,000 person company at the time, right? So it was a very, very small piece of it.
Maybe speak from your experience or like what it takes to be a seller or even a sales leader scaling an organization like that where the number one focus is growth. We have a lot of listeners on this podcast that are at startups. We have some that are at larger organizations. And I think there's different characteristics, but walk us through what you look for in a seller that, is going to be put in a good position to help scale the business. What are some of the characteristics or what do you look for in a seller?
Well, let me first say that especially with enterprise, right? Enterprise can take a while. It's not inexpensive to do this. So you have to have agreement and ideally heavy buy-in from executives and the board to do this, right? You have to have the stomach and the culture because an enterprise cycle can take years at times, right? And so the answer to your question, though, is that we talk a lot about RAD, which is resilience, accountability, and discipline. And I'll talk a little bit more about those maybe in a few minutes. But that's effectively what we're looking for, right? It is, you can find a lot of folks that have sold, and we do. There's always candidates out there who have done the thing. They can say, I know Medic. They can say, I'm a builder. They can say, I understand a value proposition, right? But are they great at these things? And are they driven to consistently improve their game? That's one of the main things that we're looking for, Griffin. So I'll say we as a leadership team, and certainly I as the senior executive over the revenue org, have made the decision that we really don't try to motivate people. We try to hire motivated people. Now we can guide, lead, teach, coach, maybe inspire, right? But it is up to the individual, especially in sales, to be driven from within. And so we have to see evidence of that during the interview process. And that's the biggest thing. And so the way in which we break that down usually comes to those three categories of resilience, accountability, and discipline. And there's another one, which would be attitude. Do I want to buy? Would I buy from this person? Right? Because they might be the smartest person in the room, they might be the most vigilant. But if they are a total jerk, then this is never going to work. At least not at Motive. There's certain industries that might work. But so that's maybe what it is that we're looking for.
Okay, so RAAD, rad. How does a seller prove that to you in a conversation? How do you test that for that? Like, what's maybe a question that you ask to get to the bottom of, okay, does this person really have resilience? Do they have accountability? Do they have that discipline? I'm curious if you have any, like, how do you get to that, or how does the seller show that?
Let's first describe what these things are.
Sure.
Okay, because so we don't get them confused. Because a word that's always out there everybody would say is grit. Most people would answer the question you gave me of grit, but it's such a catch-all that I've tried to break it down into things that are far more like precise. And accountability is owning your outcomes, good or bad. Okay, so if we start with that, right, it's easy to blame others, right? Market conditions or product limitations or some internal process when a deal falls through or something doesn't go well. But at the end of the day, the best sales reps are gonna look inward first, right? They're gonna say, what could I have done better? Did I do enough to build a champion? So when we're asking questions about, say, why are you leaving your business? Or tell me about something that didn't go well. Or tell me what's most likely not to go well. Not everybody has an A+ everything, and they should not shy away from weaknesses, right? I can tell you, I run a nearly 2,000 person organization, and I do not do everything at an A+ level. That is just impractical. And so I have to decide which things I'm best to own closer and which things others are best to own. But are they accountable? Do they own that outcome, good or bad? And we'll usually ask scenario questions to do that. The second one, well, I guess I usually start off with resilience, but I start off with accountability. So the second one being resilience, right? This is bouncing back from challenges, but I would say bouncing back with like a renewed vigor, right? So if you think about sales again, we all are going to get told no, or not right now, or I've already got a contract, or whatever, more often than we want to hear, right? And so it's really that bounce back factor. Our ability to recover from setbacks that's going to differentiate the top performers. And so we try to look for situations where somebody did fall down and understand not only did they own it, I just talked about accountability, but what did they do? What was their next move as a result of it? And it doesn't have to be business either. I mean, it's always interesting. Or did somebody show up late to the call? Was there a technical challenge in our interview that is there something that took place that gave this person an opportunity to respond in some way? And if so, what was that response? And then the third one around discipline. And this is the one that I would say holds it all together, right? So this is preparing meticulously for your meetings, every pitch. Are you super sharp? It's following whatever sales methodology that your organization's adopted. It's never skipping the seemingly small details, right? And so we will see, how did they prepare for the conversation, in my case, with me, if they're in an interview process? Can they prove that? can they pitch their current company? Believe it or not, I will ask them. I mean, let's say that they come to me and it's some company we've all heard of, Snowflake. I know what Snowflake does. Okay. But can they tell me in a way that is super smooth, or are they going to clunk over it? Because this is meant to be the best performance, right? They're interviewing for a role they seemingly want. So I may say, hey, hit it with me. Act like I'm a CEO and I don't know anything about Snowflake. How would you describe it to me? And so have they had that discipline to be able to go and articulate that value prop and the pitch to their customers? If they've been there for a period of time, it should be very smooth. So that's a long answer, but those are usually the ways in which we try to break it down.
Scenario based, yeah. Just because I'm curious, maybe it's you or one of your top reps on the team or somebody that you've interviewed, but do you have any like good stories or an example about like somebody that went through a setback and bounced back, like the resilience one? I'm just curious if you have any, because it's tough out there sometimes. So I wanna get some inspiration over here.
Yeah. Well, yes. There is a leader actually I hired recently. And interestingly, they had a really, really tough product release at his last company that caused a massive challenge to his existing sales cycles. And imagine being mid-cycle with somebody. They even had some proof of concepts going on. And the way that he described it to me was quite sharp in the sense that yes, it was a problem. And yes, it caused like a bunch of FUD, or not really FUD, but like, doubt with the customer, right? I mean, they were like, dude, how do I know this isn't going to happen to you guys all the time? Should I talk to other customers? But what they did was such a white glove response during these proof of concepts that it actually became a positive. And so I thought that was really sharp, because if you've been down a sales cycle, or we do a lot of trials at Motive, right? And a lot of the customers will trial the technology, and we're hardware and software. And so maybe you would have a cable, maybe the cable was messed up or something. We didn't share or whatever, right? Maybe the configuration on the back end wasn't right. Every buyer recognizes that there's going to be something with the technology that's a hiccup at some point. If you're able to articulate that partnership in a super meaningful way, and they feel that care, it is actually kind of stronger than if something kind of didn't go wrong to begin with, because you get to display.
Completely agree.
And so I thought that this particular leader and it was a company that I knew. I actually sort of knew about the incident sort of randomly. And so I knew what he was saying was very true. But the way in which he described taking it and using it to sort of like bear hug the customer, I thought was a sharp, a good example. But we see it all over the place. I'll tell you, unfortunately, a lot of the folks, they'll just stop at I lost the deal, and I lost the deal because the product thing went out, and that was that.
But then
right?
that goes back to the accountability piece where they're losing that there too.
That's right. And so, if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast, know that it's really important that you own the problem. If you're leaving your company and you tell me it's because the leadership is terrible, or you haven't had success because of something else or whatever, that's actually not very appealing. If it's, it didn't come together for me here because there was this thing and this other thing, and I couldn't get my arms wrapped around it, and I'm super confident in my capabilities, and I know that like putting myself into a new environment is my best chance of succeeding. It's just a far more attractive representation of, in that case, accountability. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's talk a little bit. You gave us the great breakdown of RAD and what you're looking for in a seller that can help scale an enterprise sales motion. Once you have the right players in the right seats, walk us through some of the other key things that you're focused on putting together or putting in place to scale to, an enterprise motion.
The philosophy that I've had for quite some time around culture, because I'm going to start there for a moment, has to do with creating for revenue producers. So predominantly for quota carriers, which I know is most of our listeners here. So sales reps, we want them to be in a place where they can make a lot of money. Okay. We want them to be in a place where they can be happy doing it. And we want them to be in a place where they can be supported in their health, whatever that means to them, right? That could be physical or spiritual or mental or psychological or whatever. And interestingly, it's very hard to do what I just said. It's a fine North Star. It's something that's easy
Yeah.
to say, but to your point and where I'm going to go here, putting together a situation where people can succeed and be happy doing it requires a lot of change, a lot of oversight, a lot of thought into policy. You've got to have an active market. Your product has to be constantly improved. Your policies have to support the customer, and they have to support the rep and the ecosystem. The people need to have a great comp plan that is transparent and that's fair. So yeah, remember when I arrived into Motive, from an enterprise perspective, we had very few people. So most all of our policies and operations were built for mid-market and SMB. So we had a lot of work to do to get all that into account. And we still do. I mean, we're always improving it now. Now we're in a much better place. I mean, we've got well north of 100 account executives, all that kind of thing. And just enterprise, mid-market's huge, commercial's huge, all of this kind of thing. International, we have now, they have different policies and procedures and whatnot. But if I get a little bit more tactical here, we have sales engineering. We think about those ratios. We have SDRs, and that's a great performing organization for us. We think about those ratios and how they work together. A lot of orgs have tried the SDR thing and it hasn't worked. And sometimes it's just the actual coordination effort between the SDR and the AE and who's doing the planning, who's doing the outreach to who on what cadence. Then we have how is operations supporting everything with strategy, with deal desk, with variety of other AI. How's AI slipping into the whole thing right now? We have when you're going to do a proof of concept, how's that going to work? So it goes on and on. If you're going to have a business, we have a business value organization. How does that we built that? So how do we coordinate with that group? So you've got to be careful though, because if you get too over rotated, then you can't have enough people making contact with the market and enough quota bearing headcount. So it's definitely a very thoughtful model that we're always revisiting.
There you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like as you scale, as you see the opportunity, the natural reaction is just hire as many people as possible. I think that's what happened, during 2020 when software was just flying off the shelf. Now it's more get strategic around the ecosystem, get strategic around the territories and how you're structuring things. Curious, like what your thoughts are specifically for a seller that's in an org that has access to these resources, has access to these great accounts. Like how are you sharing with your team to like navigate this change, to tap into the resources, to not just get too internal, but focus on the customers as well, if that question makes sense? Curious what your thoughts are.
It's not easy. So enablement is a big function that reports into me. So that includes onboarding and it includes ongoing coordination, whether it is improvement in a sales skill or knowing that this policy has changed or seeing this product update or managing our town halls and our sales meetings, right? And so if you have a great cadence and the culture is one that generally people want to be around, you know what I mean? Like if people are cool and they like each other and they enjoy participating and seeing things, they're going to pay a whole lot more attention, right?
Yeah.
So we definitely put a lot of focus in that. And if you get people into a room together, physically or virtually, obviously physically is best, and we do that pretty often, then the coordinated efforts are going to gel and become a lot more natural.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that we do anything that is rocket science. I mean, we put stuff out there and we say, hey, these are all the resources available to you. And this is how we're going to measure success together. And I will say that one of the things that we do have that it may sound very like, oh, of course, but actually was something that we built about a year and a half ago. It's a full-on spreadsheet. I mean, you go in there and you can see that this AE is tied to this leader and this SE, who's tied to that leader, who's got this SDR, who's got this leader, who's got this trial success person, who's got this leader, who's got this customer success. So you can see the coordination of every individual. And this is something we had to build because Workday doesn't have it, right? You can't really assign people to see each other's ecosystem that way. So just the visibility that everybody knows, if I am a second line leader and I saw, I don't know, say a sales engineer, and that sales engineer did something that was not good, right? I can now instantly see that sales engineer is tied to these other people. As an example. So I know that sounds pretty elementary, and maybe it is, but the fact that we bring people together, we get them to know each other, we share information out on how to best coordinate, playbooks on how to work with each other, and then we just provide a simple, visible way of people being able to make that connection. It's improved significantly, and actually, it's gotten better. You would think that a company that has gone through the kind of scaling we have, the company has doubled in size, I guess, since I joined, in both, not quite double in employee count, but double in revenue, you would think that the coordination would get worse. But actually, we've had this situation where people enjoy working with each other and challenge each other, and expect greatness from each other, and it's gotten a lot better.
Adam, one thing I want to talk about is shifting from transactional deals, which still is important, but shifting to large strategic whale hunting, or do your whole number in one deal kind of mindset. Like, walk us through what that looks like from a company level, but also give us some advice on like specific individual mindset too, if you can.
And so first and foremost, I would encourage anybody listening here that if you are joining a company and they are looking to do something that's a big market reprioritization, to understand a little bit about why and like what the reasoning is. Our enterprise growth started with enterprise talent. And if you hire great people, they will find a way. They're going to find a way to win, and they're going to attract other great people. So we are very intentional about hiring great people, but also making sure that we keep great people. And if somebody's really just not a fit, doesn't mean they're a bad person, but we need to move them off the program, or else it's going to introduce mediocrity, and it'll also start to deteriorate sort of the interest and attitude for those folks that are on the team. So going from down market to up market is a challenge. It's a very real thing that a lot of companies have failed at. And it's because they do it for the wrong reasons. And they aren't setting the right expectations. I mean, the enterprise cycles are different. There's just a different profile of person. Some people can go from mid-market to enterprise. That can happen. But it's a hard transition. So hopefully that answers the question you were after.
Yeah. Well, we've got resilience, attitude, accountability, discipline, got to be a good culture fit. I mean, I think that comes back to accountability and attitude, but absolutely. Are there any, when you look at enterprise, and this could be at Motive, this could be at previous orgs, like enterprise sellers, any other characteristics specific to enterprise that you see or recommend, or, for the audience listening that would be good to focus on or dig into that you're looking for?
Well, first of all, I mentioned grit, but I see that as a combination, just the catch-all for...
That's table stakes.
Yeah, resilience and accountability, discipline. I mean, listen, if you are somebody, if you're a seller, I'll tell you that my old friend used to tell me pipeline will cure all ails, right?
Oh, yeah.
And what he means by this is that there's nothing that's going to create anxiety for somebody quite as much as not having enough pipeline. And so I know this is a little bit more tactical, right? So we're talking more about the person as their characteristics and their profile and like who they are. But as far as what you're doing in your role, if you are not constantly building pipeline, constantly meeting new people, right? So let's say that you are a seller who only has 5 accounts, right? So you're a very, very big strategic type person. You have to be meeting new people in those accounts. Always, 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 always. Obviously, if you've got 50 accounts or if you've got 100 accounts, then you want to be introduced into these new accounts consistently and meeting new people all the time. So I think that that's maybe the trick that is not so secret. It is not easy. It's simple to say. It is not easy to do, but it is absolutely like the way, like all the best sellers that I know, everyone here at Motive, outside of Motive, the folks that I know that, you know, we have folks here at Motive that, you know, clear 7 figures pretty consistently. And the folks that I know that have done that really, really well in their careers and kind of, they always have deals. There's just always the next deal, and they're not brought to them by inbound. It's not a marketing generated thing. I mean, those things can happen. I mean, depends on what kind of company you are. They are generating pipeline for themselves always, no matter if they've got a deal closing next week. There's always that lens. So that would be maybe the one piece of advice is, if that's not something that you are willing to commit to and remain disciplined to, the sales game is probably not the right fit for you. I mean, you can do other things, but if you really want to have great success and make, you know, sort of generational wealth, and be able to do this a long time, you're going to have to decide that you really enjoy that process. Because if you're an enterprise seller, again, you might close 1 deal a year or something, right? So you can't be so in love with the close. And sometimes it's a relief, right? I mean, you get through it. You
don't even feel happy. You're just like, thank God it's over.
Right? I mean, you're like happy. Yeah, sweet, I get my paycheck. But it's like, it's not always that exhilarating, especially if you win a deal and it takes like 4 months to negotiate or do legal work, right?
Right.
So you've got to love the process. You've got to love making contact with people, meeting new people, learning about them, and making it about them. Don't show up and tell me about all of the features and functions your thing does. I mean, you know, you have competitors and they would describe it the same way. So if you're going to take an opportunity to grab time of an exec, because I buy a lot of technology, as you can imagine, right? I mean, we have you know, a lot of needs here at Motive, and so the most successful engagements are people that get to understand about me and my needs, and they're working to take their technology to apply it uniquely to my problem. They're not just trying to sell me every module they have. That's actually sort of, I think, counterproductive. That some sellers fall in that trap.
Yeah.
So those are maybe a couple of things for you there, Griff.
You just
Awesome.
Adam,
Awesome.
you just signed yourself up for a couple extra cold calls after that. I buy a lot of technology comment.
I don't think it's a big secret. I mean, you know, the CRO is kind of a budget center for a lot of companies. So
you heard it here first.
That's right.
They're coming after you. All right, let's kind of shift into the last section of the interview. But anything else you want to share, like on RAD or how you hire or how you scale, before we kind of get into the last couple questions here?
No, I think we've hit it pretty good.
One thing I just want to double down on before we do move to that is just the thing you talked about, mindset. Pipeline cures all, but I would say mindset does too. Like, we talk a lot about skills and enablement and all sorts of stuff, but if you have a good mindset and you are a fun person to work with, you respect the people that you work with, you say thank you, like the little stuff, like be a human being, you're going to have a lot of success that comes from that too. So I just wanted to double down on that point that you made.
But Adam, genuine person too.
Yeah,
you know, I think we've all been around somebody who's disingenuous and they say thank you 28 times and you're still like, I still don't think you really mean that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So I think if you really care about people, it'll shine through. But you're absolutely right. You know, when we talked about doing the right things, the discipline side of this, if you're going to meet somebody new, so you're going to, you know, we talk about pipeline, but it's basically saying be committed to the whole cycle, right? At all times. And if you are going to get a meeting scheduled with somebody, then have the discipline to be properly prepared. You know, you work so hard to get that meeting. So stop, slow down, make sure you got it all kind of together, and and go from there. But no, I love what you're saying. And I used to say, instead of, a place where people can be happy, I used to actually say a place where people could have fun, because that's the way I am.
Yeah.
But I realized that some of our top performers, they're not like the fun crowd per se. They you've seen this in life, right? Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or something. These are not people that were always out, partying. In fact, Kobe was famously not doing a lot of that stuff. And he was waking up at 4 a.m. every day, and just the grind was part of his thing. I mean, you all may not realize that Stephen Curry puts up 500 shots a day. 500 shots a day. That is 3,500 three-pointers. Three-pointers in a week. He's put up millions of practice three-pointers Steph Curry has put up in his lifetime. And he's made like 4,000 in the game. And that's made him by far the best three-point shooter of all time. So
Dang.
I just think it's important to know that, like,
second best behind me.
Second best behind Griff. Frankie, I don't.
No, Griff did play a little b-ball.
I'm like, those are rookie numbers, dude. No, I'm kidding. Steph's the goat. Steph's the goat. He's my guy.
The best people at something are super intentional about it. And so while I think you're absolutely right, like, have a cool attitude, be a good dude to be around, be a great partner. It is inspiring when people are properly prepared and they're committed to their craft. And it usually shows through. You just can't make it up. You can't show up on in October and try to practice 10,000 3-pointers. You're never going to catch up to Steph Curry, who's been putting up 500 shots a day for the last 20 years. It's never going to happen.
I love it. Okay, younger Adam, just getting into sales, walking out of University, Kentucky. What's one piece of advice you'd give yourself, your younger self, entering into sales?
You don't know everything. And I certainly thought I did. I was very confident. I actually became an entrepreneur right out of college. And I was that confident, right? Like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. And I didn't. And I'm so aware of it now that I always take time to learn more. I mean, every day I'm listening to something, or I'm watching something, or I'm asking somebody something. And if you're open to it, you're going to be a better seller, because you're just going to be more curious. If you just become more curious about yourself and about how you can improve, then you'll shut up and listen to customers also. So I feel like I would probably say that. And by the way, that comes in a lot of different forms. One of the things that AEs will get bummed about is when their book size gets smaller. Okay, I don't know. This is a thing. Naturally, as humans, we are saying, you took this opportunity away from me. Every time I have reduced book sizes at Motive, the performance has gone up. And it has been, but by the way, every time, somebody's been upset about it, but they come back and they crush. That group of AEs, those that are still here, that I mentioned that were here when I started at Motive, they were very unsure what to do when we added all these other AEs and made the book sizes smaller. And they have far exceeded their attainment and paychecks. The W-2s are, in some cases, like 5 times what they were before. So it is, I guess you don't know everything, young Adam. People that have come before you have seen this. They've tried things. So be open to listening and trying it, and don't always lead with emotion. I was probably a little bit too excitable when I was a kid.
All right, Adam, last question for you. How do you define an elite seller?
This is somebody who is always focused on their customer, meaning they are interested, okay? And they have what I described before, the resilience, the willing to bounce back when something doesn't go their way, the accountability, there's somebody that's going to own the outcome, and the discipline, doing the hard things even when you don't want to.
Adam, this has been an awesome conversation. We appreciate you jumping on, taking time out of your day to come and hang with us on the Elite Selling Podcast. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Griffin. Thanks, Frankie.